Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Think about a nation fighting for its life on the battlefield, defending itself against a massive invasion.
Yeah, it's an image we've all become familiar with.
Right. But now, imagine that same nation is also fighting another war, just as critical, just as brutal, but this one's internal. It's a fight against, well, deeply rooted corruption.
That's Ukraine's reality, this incredible, difficult two-front war. And today we're diving into how these two battles are surprisingly and critically linked.
Exactly. How is Ukraine, while fighting Russia, still pushing forward on this generational struggle against oligarchy and corruption? What are the next steps? It matters not just for Ukraine, but really for international stability, too.
It absolutely does. And our main source today is a really thorough policy report. It's called Anti-Corruption Front, Ukraine's Alliance for Securing Democracy.
A solid piece of research. And we've layered in insights from various news reports and historical context to give you the full picture.
So our mission is basically to unpack the progress Ukraine has made. And it's remarkable in places, but also the huge challenges that are still there. And crucially, what international partners and Ukrainian civil society are recommending.
Yeah, understanding these recommendations is key to seeing how Ukraine can, hopefully, win on both fronts.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right.
Ukraine's starting point. After independence, well, it wasn't great corruption-wise. You had U.S. diplomats in the 90s, early 2000s, actually calling it a kleptocracy.
Which means rule by thieves. I mean, that's a heavy label.
It really is. And by 2014, Transparency International had them ranked, 142nd out of 175 countries? That's pretty far down the list.
That's the bleak backdrop, definitely. But then 2014 happens, the revolution of Dignity Maidan. And that wasn't just about geopolitical alignment.
No, it was fundamentally driven by people on the street demanding an end to that oligarch control, that pervasive corruption. It was a real grassroots push.
Absolutely. That popular demand, that energy, it really kickstarted this pretty unprecedented anti-corruption drive.
And the sources really emphasize that unprecedented progress. They talk about world-leading transparency systems. That sounds ambitious. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it's quite concrete, actually. For instance, Ukraine created the world's first public beneficial ownership registry.
Okay, so you can actually see who really owns companies, not just shell corporations.
Exactly. Cuts through the anonymity, often used for, shady deals. Then there's Prozoro. That's their public procurement system.
Right, I've heard of that one.
It's considered one of the most transparent globally. Every government tender, every bid, every contract decision, it's all out there online for anyone to see.
Think about the impact on bribery for government contracts. That was something huge.
Massive. And it didn't stop there. They also set up a public database of politically exposed persons, PPs, officials and their families, alongside a really comprehensive asset declaration system.
So officials have to declare what they own and the public can check it.
Precisely. It makes it much harder to hide illicit wealth. It's a huge step towards accountability.
And what about digitalization? The Daya app, that sounds like more than just convenience. How does putting government services online fight corruption?
It's actually quite clever. Daya digitalized over 120 government services. Imagine getting permits, licenses, social benefits, all through an app. No need to physically go somewhere, wait in line, maybe face an official looking for a bribe.
It removes the opportunity, essentially.
Exactly. Less face-to-face interaction, less discretion for officials, fewer chances for that kind of petty corruption. Their goal was ambitious, a paperless state by 2024. It's a major modernization push.
Okay, but building these systems is one thing. Enforcing them is another. If the existing courts were, as you said, too compromised, how did they make any of this stick?
That's the crucial part. They realized the old system wasn't fit for purpose for this specific fight. So they did something pretty radical. They built a whole new parallel anti-corruption infrastructure.
A whole new system? Like what?
Specialized independent bodies. You have the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, for investigations, the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO, to prosecute those cases, and even a dedicated high anti-corruption court, HACC, to try them, plus the National Agency on Corruption Prevention, NAACP, and ARMA for asset recovery.
Wow, that's a full suite. What keeps them independent, though? That seems key.
It is. And here's the really vital, innovative feature. The selection process for the heads of these bodies involves international experts. Foreign experts help vet the candidates.
Foreign experts? Why?
It was a direct answer to the long-standing problem of political interference appointing cronies. This international vetting was designed to build in integrity and independence right from the start.
That's a strong signal. And we shouldn't forget decentralization either.
Yeah.
Shifting power and money down to local communities. That wasn't just about governance, was it?
No, it had huge implications. It made local governance more transparent, more accountable. And critically, when the full-scale invasion happened in 2022, those empowered local communities were often much quicker and more effective at organizing resistance, coordinating defenses. That local resilience was vital.
So these internal reforms actually bolstered their ability to fight the external war.
Profoundly. And here's a really provocative point from the report, something that might change how you think about why the 2022 invasion happened.
Okay.
The report argues that Ukraine's success in starting to dismantle its oligarchy, its move towards transparency and away from that kleptocratic model, that this progress was seen by Putin as a direct threat.
Wait, so Putin invaded partly because Ukraine was cleaning up its act, not just territory or NATO?
That's the argument the report makes, yes. That a successful, democratic, transparent Ukraine breaking away from the Russian model of centralized, corrupt power that was an existential threat to Putin's own system and his regional influence. Ukraine's fight against corruption wasn't just domestic, it was geopolitical.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. This hero's journey fighting a two-front war.
Exactly. A nation trying to build genuine rule of law right on his border. The report suggests that was simply intolerable for Moscow.
Okay, so they made strides, incredible strides.
Yeah.
But the fight isn't over. The sources are blunt. Corruption is still deeply entrenched.
Absolutely. Progress, yes. But the old structures, the old mentalities, they fight back. Power is still quite concentrated, particularly in the office of the president, according to the report. And there are concerns that some appointees are maybe more focused on controlling the judiciary than pushing reforms forward.
And how does that actually play out? Are we seeing setbacks?
We are. Ironically, sometimes from the very agencies created to fight corruption. The report mentions some overzealous cases by NEU and CPU targeting well-regarded reformers.
Targeting reformers, not corrupt officials.
Right. Cases like the ones against Andrei Kobolyev, the former head of the state gas company Naftogaz, or Andrei Pivovarsky, a former infrastructure minister. These cases, where there wasn't even an allegation of personal enrichment, looked politically motivated to many observers.
That must undermine confidence.
Hugely. It spooked international partners, made them question the independence of these agencies, and then you had the former head of RMA, the Asset Recovery Agency, actually being accused of embezzlement himself.
So the watchdogs themselves aren't immune. And wartime hasn't helped, I imagine. Weren't some transparency rules suspended?
They were initially. Under martial law, things like the mandatory electronic asset declarations for officials were paused. Understandable in the first chaotic weeks, perhaps.
Like now?
Now there's a strong push to bring them back fully. With the immediate crisis phase over, that transparency becomes even more crucial, especially with reconstruction aid flowing in.
And what about the constitutional court reforms? I heard that got complicated. The Venice Commission.
Right. The Venice Commission, that's the Council of Europe's body on constitutional law, very influential. They issued an opinion on Ukraine's constitutional court reforms that initially seemed, well, muddled, as the report puts it. It seemed to downplay the need for that crucial foreign expert vetting role we talked about.
And how did that go down?
It caused immediate uproar from Ukrainian civil society. They saw it as potentially rolling back years of progress on judicial independence. The pushback was so strong, the opinion had to be clarified later.
It shows how invested Ukrainians are in this. What about the anti-oligarch law? That sounds like a good idea on paper.
It does, but again, concerns arose. The Venice Commission advised postponing its full implementation. The worry was that it could be used selectively as a political weapon against opponents rather than as a fair tool to systematically reduce oligarchic influence across the board.
Okay, which brings us to the really big recent development, July 2025. This bill, 12414, passed by the parliament. What exactly did it do? This caused quite a stir.
It really did. It was seen as a major step backward by reformers and international partners. Essentially, this law gave the prosecutor general, who was appointed by the president, really strict control over an NDU and SAPO.
Those independent bodies we discussed earlier.
The very same. The law gave the prosecutor general new powers to reassign ME cases to other investigative bodies, potentially ones less independent or effective. It allowed the transfer of investigative materials and, critically, gave the power to issue direct instructions to the anti-corruption prosecutors in SAPO.
So it basically gutted their independence, stripped the heads of NBU and SPO of their final say on charting decisions.
That's exactly how it was widely interpreted, a direct assault on the independence that was so painstakingly built.
And the public reaction? In the middle of a war.
It was immediate, widespread, and powerful. Thousands took to the streets in Kyiv, Lviv, Dnipro. The report calls them the first widespread anti-government protests since the full-scale invasion began in 2022.
Wow. What were they saying?
The signs were incredibly telling. Placards saying, "Welcome to Russia," or "My father did not die for this." It tapped into this deep feeling that this wasn't just a legal change, it was a betrayal of the European path they've sacrificed so much for, a step back towards the old, corrupt ways.
That's powerful imagery. What about the international community, the EU, the US?
They reacted very quickly and very negatively. The EU Enlargement Commissioner, Marta Kos, called it a serious step back and made it clear it put Ukraine's EU accession hopes at risk. Human Rights Watch, the OECD, they all condemned it, saying it damaged Ukraine's credibility and could affect future aid.
So intense pressure from both inside and outside. How did President Zelenskyy handle it?
Well, this is perhaps the most significant part of this recent episode. Faced with this backlash, President Zelenskyy did a U-turn. He publicly acknowledged the concerns from civil society and partners.
He backed down.
Yes. He announced he would propose a new bill specifically to restore the full independence of NABU and SAPO. It was a clear demonstration that public pressure and international alignment still hold significant weight. But, the whole affair raises questions about the underlying tensions and commitment to reform within the corridors of power.
It really underscores that fighting corruption isn't just a nice to have. It's absolutely mission critical for Ukraine, for everything joining the EU, NATO, winning the war, getting reconstruction money.
Absolutely. It's foundational. Without credible anti-corruption efforts, that massive Western investment needed for rebuilding just won't materialize. And the whole idea of integrating into the Euro-Atlantic community depends on it. It's about shared values.
So what needs to happen now? The report lays out some very specific recommendations for Ukraine itself. What are the top priorities?
Okay, first, fix the Constitutional Court selection process. Make it transparent, merit-based, and definitely keep that international expert vetting component strong. The highest court needs unimpeachable integrity.
Makes sense. What else?
Resume those airtight electronic asset declarations for all officials and get political party financing reporting back up and running robustly. Transparency needs to be restored and enhanced.
Okay.
Then strengthen the core anti-corruption bodies, NABU, APO, HACC. Give them the resources, including more staff, to handle the caseload effectively and independently.
And RMA, the Asset Recovery Agency.
Yes, reform RMA. Appoint a credible, respected leader and make sure it actually works effectively to manage seized assets. You don't want recovered assets just vanishing again. And looking ahead to reconstruction, mandate the use of the DREAM platform.
DREAM.
Digital Restoration Ecosystem for Accountable Management. It's a system designed to make all reconstruction spending totally transparent. Needs to be mandatory for all projects, big or small.
That seems vital. Anything else for Ukraine internally?
Yeah, cleaning up the broader judiciary. Keep a close eye on the High Qualification Commission of Judges. Empower the Public Integrity Council to ensure honest judges get appointed. Revisit the anti-oligarch law to make sure it's applied fairly and strengthens anti-monopoly efforts, not just targets rivals. And finally, take the bold step of liquidating the old, notoriously corrupt Kyiv Administrative Court, DACK, and setting up a new, properly vetted administrative court.
That's a hefty domestic agenda. But international partners have a role too, right?
Yeah.
Especially regarding aid accountability. What does the report suggest for, say, the U.S. Congress?
For the U.S., it recommends formally coordinating the oversight work of different inspectors general watching U.S. aid, even setting up an international IG fusion cell right there in Kyiv for on-the-ground monitoring.
Boots on the ground for oversight.
Exactly. And here's a key lever: condition non-security assistance. So, economic aid, reconstruction funds on Ukraine, continuing to deliver on these anti-corruption reforms. Tie the money to the progress.
That creates real incentive. What about the G7 donors collectively?
They should align their priorities, agree on the key anti-corruption benchmarks Ukraine needs to meet. They should also integrate that DREAM system into their own funding processes to ensure transparency. And, importantly, create a Ukrainian civil society advisory board.
Why that board?
To get direct expert input from Ukrainians on the ground who understand the nuances, making sure international support is actually effective and targets the right issues.
And for the European Union, with EU membership being the goal.
The EU should invest more in supporting independent investigative journalism and diverse media ownership in Ukraine, crucial for accountability. They should also benchmark Ukraine's progress on transparency and digital government against EU standards, and keep integrating Ukraine into existing EU anti-corruption programs and networks. Basically, help build the structures and culture of a transparent EU-aligned state.
So wrapping this up, it's impossible to overstate. Ukraine's fight against corruption is just as vital, strategically, as its military defense against Russia. There are two sides of the same coin for survival and success.
Absolutely. Winning this internal battle is the key to unlocking Western investment, ensuring long-term stability, integrating with Europe, and honestly, serving as an inspiration for democratic reformers everywhere. It really is a collective fight in many ways.
And what really strikes me, thinking about all this, is the resilience of the Ukrainian people themselves. Facing invasion, facing these deep-seated internal challenges, yet they still take to the streets. Their civil society keeps pushing, demanding integrity, demanding the rule of law.
It's remarkable.
It truly shows that real national strength isn't just about tanks and trenches. It comes from that persistent, unwavering demand for accountability, for transparency, for government that serves its people honestly. That spirit, that determination to build a better future even in the darkest times. That's maybe the most powerful resource Ukraine has.